Welcome, brothers and sisters, to the Meher Baba program. I'm Fred Stankus, along with my co-host Suhas Ginde. Welcome, Suhas.
Thank you.
This of our series on this wonderful booklet called Meher Baba Calling, compiled by the Avatar Meher Baba Center in Bombay and copyrighted by the Avatar Meher Baba Perpetual Public Charitable Trust in Ahmednagar, India. And these are extracts of discourses Baba gave throughout his lifetime. There's 81 in this book. There's probably thousands of messages Baba gave. So these are selected gems. And we begin at number 46 or 47, which is, go ahead, Suhas, why don't you bring us that one, which I think is a nice way to introduce the show.
Yes, Baba says, know me as God. God is nearer to you than your own shadow. In fact, He is not only within you, but He is your very self, your higher self. You cannot get at Him, for you seek Him through your ego mind, which converts Him into the will of the wisp, which is a shy flower. I am God, God the beyond, and God in human form. I draw you ever closer to me by giving you frequent occasions of my companionship. But familiarity often makes you forget that I am God. I know all that happens and will happen. Whatever happens does not happen without my will. Knowingly, I allow things to happen in their natural course. I come down to your level to such an extent that I mix with you all. I appear to be cheerful, playful, but you have no idea of my divinity, of my all-pervading state.
It's wonderful in the synchronization of the movie that's running now, Baba visiting in 1956 and stopping in New York.
Yeah.
And it was amazing as you read. It was like as though he was giving the message. It was so appropriate.
Yes.
As he says, I mingle with you, I'm with you, you don't know and understand who I am. So, but it's amazing in that first paragraph you said that God is nearer to you. Baba said God is nearer to you, nearer than your own shadow. So we all have that. It's isn't it that there's a story of the musk of a deer? It tries to jump over a precipice and fails and comes crashing down. And
the story goes somewhat like there was a deer that was wandering around, and he suddenly came across a strange smell that he got intoxicated with, and it drew it to him. It kept following this scent, all wandering around, and finally it came to a cliff, and then it jumped over the cliff and died. And at that instant when it died, it found out that the smell was really coming out of its own navel. So
wow.
That's the example of how we look for God everywhere, but He's right within our heart.
So the perfume, the essence of Him is within us, but we're seeking it outside.
We're seeking it everywhere else. But within us. It's God within us. That's what even the name Jesus meant. His name was Emmanuel, which means God be with us. It's in the New Testament.
A lot of people are told that we're too weak to know that.
Who says that?
Well, I mean, sometimes
people who try to control your mind.
Well, sometimes people will say, how you're a sinner and you're lost. How can you say this?
That is the Western concept of understanding.
Right.
A man's born into sin, and he has got someone above him.
Right, exactly.
The God is up there, sitting on a throne and so on, who controls us like we're the great machine.
But what you're saying, he's really here.
This is the Eastern concept. God is one without a second. He's in the Sat Chit Ananda state. That's existence, knowledge, and bliss. We are not in contact with that state. We are actually the shadow of God. Creation is God's shadow. He's giving an example of how God is nearer to us than our own shadow. Just like our shadow is near to us, it follows us wherever we
Exactly.
go. Can't get rid of it.
But we may think that shadow's real, but it's the shadow.
In the same manner, God is real, and we, who we think are real in this gross consciousness, are actually false. But you have to wake up to that concept. Not everyone can do that.
Well, many people will say, I am just a poor sinner. I am flesh. I'm of the flesh, and I have no ability to know this thing which you're talking about, this divinity that's within me, and I only ask and surrender myself to Him. So they don't understand the concept of themselves as having, well, like in what they call in self-realization, you know. They don't understand the aspect of self-realization.
It's the realization of the Atma, the soul.
Right.
Okay, but that's a concept that is alien to this culture.
So what you're saying, the Eastern culture considers self-realization a way, and then the Western feel differently.
The nature of God and the soul is basically an Eastern concept. It's Vedanta, it's Hindu concept. It comes from the Vedas, the books of knowledge. Veda means, Ved means knowledge, like Vidnyan, the highest divine knowledge. And the Vedas, the Upanishad, these were like things that were revealed to sages, these forms of knowledge. People who went up and meditated in the Himalayas in the cold, despite whatever temperatures, they were totally detached from the external.
And this information and knowledge was revealed to them.
It was revealed to them through their meditation processes.
I see.
So it's a technique that is not fully understood.
And it's not a Western way at all.
The Western world is, there was a man in charge. He said, do this, and you followed him, and if you didn't do that, you were punished. So you're a sinner, you're always suffering, it's because you're a sinner. That's the explanation. Now, how do you get over that? The bottom line is, one has to love God in whatever way you understand Him. By loving, there are people in India who don't read what we are reading. They're illiterate, but they have love for God. You see? So, this is for the ego mind, It's people who are mentally caught up into the world and they want a way out to extricate themselves. These are ways for you to read so that it's a counter.
Well, in India, Baba had followers from actually two opposite sides of the spectrum. He had followers from a very highly educated state called Andhra Pradesh, and then he had followers from, it's a district in India called Omnia Poor.
Very poor.
Very poor. Poorest of the poor. So poor.
It's in the north, I think.
But so poor that Westerners who went to this village, sometimes I've talked to them, the people have enough food per day to feed their own family. So when a guest comes, they don't have food. But seeing a Westerner visiting their city, they will give up their meal that night to serve you. And they won't tell you this, of course. They may eat a little morsels with you.
And you see, this is like a way of life there.
Right.
It's not where someone has to tell them you have to give some of your food to a stranger.
I know, and these people are not that educated. They're poorest of the poor, but they have a fire burning for Baba. And Baba used to say, "Omnia Poor is my heart."
Yes.
And Andhra Pradesh, which is more educated, is my mind. Is my.
We are by reading this, we are using the mental, the head way.
Yeah, the head.
And Baba is saying, follow the path of love, because by love you efface your ego mind.
I mean, you can meet a person from any spiritual path, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, and if they have a fire of love, almost the dogmas and doctrines are not unnecessary.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't
matter.
I mean, There are those. Well, what's that yoga called?
Bhakti yoga,
Bhakti yoga, which is yoga
of worship, devotion.
Of devotion, which is a path where you seek to love and worship. You don't want to hear
But you have to love your ideal.
Right.
Whatever you imagine God to be is like your ideal.
Right.
And it's something that is attainable, not something that's way beyond our means.
Right. So, but you could be loving God and be a very, very simple individual. You don't have to be an intellectual giant.
You automatically live a simple life when you love God.
Right.
You're not loving things. You're not loving material possessions.
I mean, how many people always refer to their loving auntie or grandmother sometimes that would always go out of their way to love and care, and they never thought and asked you intellectual questions or anything. That's the kind of a love in a way that some people have for God. Yeah. They are not.
And in India especially, there's a lot of devotion. You know, people you can see, you've been there before.
Yeah.
You see poor people even coming to Baba's tomb and all, they bring a little flower or a fruit. It's what they got.
They have, that's all they have.
What you told me about Omnia Poor and how people give their
exactly.
food, whatever little that they have, they share. And I think that's the concept of karma yoga, the yoga of activity, and there's the yoga of devotion. But the best ways, as people in Vedanta have said, is to contemplate God most of the time. And that involves meditation or contemplation. You are focusing your attention on this deity or this divinity.
One time in my first visits to India, back in the early 70s, I visited with one of Meher Baba's close mandali, Padre. Mm-hmm. He was...
one of his cousins, too.
Yes, he was a...
But he gave up whatever he wanted.
He was a man's man. Really, he'd smoke a beedi and so forth, but at the same time, he was a homeopathic practitioner, and he would treat people with homeopathic remedies. But when I arrived in India, I told him about, somewhat of the confusion that exists in the West over a person seeking an Eastern master or philosophy. And you know what he said? He said, do they know your heart? He said, they may try to influence your mind, but do they know your heart? He says, when your heart's on fire, no one can understand when the heart is on fire, burning for the beloved.
That's what's talked about when your light shines out of you.
Yeah.
And what I'm talking about, what you were talking about, that village in Omnia Poor where people share what little they have, exactly. That's pretty much the concept of the Good Samaritan type of thing. They give unto others.
Exactly.
It's also based on a lot of the teachings in the Sermon on the Mount. Do unto others, help other people and all that. Not help people with the understanding that something's going to come to you.
Exactly.
Not with expectation. No expectations, as a matter of fact.
The next message is a good one. It's try not to understand me. We're almost discussing the moment you try to understand God rather than love Him,
yes,
you begin to misunderstand Him. Mm-hmm. And your ignorance feeds your ego. Mm-hmm. Mind cannot reach that which is beyond it. God is infinite and beyond the reach of mind. Do not try with your limited mind to understand the significance of my actions, nor try to imitate them. Mm-hmm. You must not do what I do, but do what I tell you to do. Mm-hmm. To try to bring my every action within the orbit of your understanding is but to understand the limitations of your own understanding. The utter simplicity of my divine game appears to be highly intricate as soon as you try to understand it through your intellect. To ask for a purely intellectual proof of the existence of God is like asking for the privilege of being able to see with your ears.
It's impossible.
There's some folks here in Los Angeles at the Meher Baba group that I think really epitomize the aspect of loving, like this lady named Shireen, who was a woman, I don't know, she in her 60s or 70s, but she came originally from Iran. Persia. She brought her family here. Her lovely daughters, and they're all married now, and they have children, and she also was a attendant to this Asfandyar Vasali, who was one of Baba's Prem Ashram students back in the 20s.
Late 20s,
who now is, near 90 years old, and he just went back to Iran about a month or so ago, and But she, when we would be discussing some of Baba's discourses or messages, a lot of times she would, well, maybe have a language difficulty, in English, but she'd always say, just love Baba. Just love him.
That's what I was talking about, those people who are in India who are illiterate, do not read this. This is a brain. This is a medium for the ego mind.
Exactly.
To understand Baba, but you cannot understand Baba by reading. You can only do it by your actions, loving actions.
Exactly.
And that's why I was saying there are people in India who love Baba, love God, and they offer him a flower, a fruit, whatever they have. And also to people who come there, because you are loving God within other people as well. God dwells in each and every one of us. So by helping your fellow man, you're also, in tune with God.
The thing is, when you become more or less on the path and become maybe an advanced pilgrim, how your thirst for the beloved even becomes greater, to where that is what preoccupies your mind 24 hours a day, thinking of him, just like when there's a young lovers meet, the beloved and the beloved, they need union and they're desperate for it. It's the same fire that is in the heart of a seeker who wants to be united with his beloved.
Yes, but there are some people, and I've read this somewhere, I think in Vivekananda's works, where there are people who love God so much that they get such a big joy out of that loving
intoxication,
God, that they would rather be in hell and have that pleasure, like tasting honey or tasting sugar. They'd rather have that taste.
Wow.
Rather than actually becoming God itself. They would rather, that's why some of the Mandali, they're not into God realization. They would rather come back and serve Baba.
Well,
they take pleasure in serving Baba.
I have heard that from many of the Mandali, the close disciples of Baba.
It is that
They've left, a lot of them have left their physical world, they've died in recent years, but they were saying, I would ask them, do you want God realization? They said, no, we want to be back to serve the beloved. We'd like to be with him again.
Yes.
Just being with him. Going
through so much pleasure.
Yeah, the trials and tribulations they went through with him too. A lot of times they would go through long treks and trips through India, sleeping little, eating little, spending cold nights with very little, and being with him and
suffering with him. He suffered with them too.
And giving them various disciplines sometimes where they'd have to fast or be silent and so forth.
For a specific period of time.
But they said to be with him was just so, blissful.
Yes.
Just to be in his presence, to see him look at you and feel.
That's the pleasure they want, not becoming merged with God, because then there's no reason for them to come back.
Well, that's what you're bringing up is good for the audience, the viewers, to realize that a lot of people always put this big plum out there, God realization. That's what I want. It's like as though, beam me up, Scotty, I'm ready to leave. You know what I mean? The point of it is...
Why? Live in the world but not be attached to it.
Exactly.
And Baba takes you through all your trials and tribulations when you're focused on him.
That's right.
But when you're not, you're suffering by yourself. He's suffering or he's helping you through your suffering.
They say that when a person's consciousness becomes pure and clear, that you see nature and its beauty in such ways that you've never dreamed of. You appreciate his beauty.
Yes.
Well, like Erit said, one of the best prayers, or one of Baba's disciples said, a true seeker will just wake up and say, oh, what a beautiful sky you've given today.
Yes.
Oh, the beautiful sun. And look at those fruit hanging from that tree. You created this fruit. He said that is one of the best prayers one can give, is when you pray.
It's appreciation.
It's appreciation.
You're appreciating the beauty of nature.
The beauty of it all.
You see a beautiful sunset.
But it comes spontaneous without any kind of contrived method. I'm going to pretend like I'm enjoying this. You say it from your heart. As a matter of fact, Baba said the best prayer is the prayer from the heart. Not a prayer of rote,
not of words.
This saying all the various mantras.
Then that becomes ritual and dogma. If your heart's not in a prayer, don't say it.
Exactly.
Because if you're saying a prayer and you're thinking about your finance and all, you're praying to that.
Exactly.
That's what Baba says. Your mind has to be focused on who you're praying to. And it's a prayer of spontaneity. It's like love is very spontaneous. That's what it is. And a lot of people, even though the circle of Baba, the Mandali members, will reincarnate again to serve him in his next form, whenever he takes form, another 700 to 1400 years, which are usually based on cycles of time. And each cycle, as I explained a couple of shows before, have ages. There are 11 ages in a cycle of time, and the avatar comes in the 11th age. They can be from 65 to 120 years apiece, these cycles.
You know, we ought to mention to the viewers a way to go to Meher Baba's tomb in India. You know, there is a tomb, it's in Ahmednagar, and there's also a pilgrim center where you can register and stay. It's very nominal, the food and boarding. And there is also an archives building that has been, I don't know if it's open for business or just open to view, but it's got special construction of 18-inch, thick walls to preserve Baba's clothes and some of his other things personal stuff he had. The Smithsonian Institute came over, a representative, to give us consulting, ideas about how to build an archival,
yes, because there's a lot of heat and humidity out there.
And there's this pilgrim center that exists now that houses 56 men on one side, 56 women on the other, and then there's a big vegetarian dining hall in the middle. But under construction and to open, I believe, in 06, is this beautiful, larger pilgrim center about 1 mile behind Meher Baba's tomb, out in the middle of this nice open area of undeveloped land, with accommodations for over 100 Westerners, 100 Easterners, or I should say 100 men, 100 women. Both Easterners and Westerners come there. Now, and Westerners are coming from Australia.
It's very reasonable to stay there, is it not?
Very. I can't describe the cost because this is public access, but the idea of it is they're very nominal.
Compared to hotels.
Oh, of course it is. And then you get to go to Baba's tomb for morning prayers if you want to. You can visit the archival room, and I think they have a museum by the tomb.
And maybe when people go there, they might get some of this devotional feeling.
Yes, exactly. I mean, Baba's tomb is open every morning from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. at night, and prayers are at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Every day of the year, 365 or 66.
There's someone there to keep
There's
it
always there. There's always a cleaning of the tomb. That's one of the parts I love. When I'm in India at the Pilgrim Center, I wake up at 5:45. They offer tea if you want, but I just rush up. The tomb opens at 6 a.m., and they allow you to go in. Maybe you could take a little bit of blessing, darshan, stay in the tomb for 5 minutes. Then they bring in the dust pans to dust out the tomb. There's a nice marble slab that was imported from Italy. This marble that has Baba's saying, "I've come not to teach, but to awaken." And you get a chance to go in there. And tombstone. But during the day, they put a cloth over that tomb. They pile up garlands of flowers. Before the end of the day, there's probably 2-3 inches or 6 inches of flowers on top of the
like a huge
tomb, a mound. And pilgrims go in, take their blessing, darshan, and beside the tomb, and then come out. There's been Catholic priests that have got in there.
All faiths.
There's been people from all faiths.
Baba had disciples of all faiths.
Exactly. Baba is non-denominational.
Yes.
In fact, his symbol, mastery and servitude, has all the religions, major religions.
All the emblems of all the faiths.
Exactly. And on the cornerstones, the sides of his tomb are Christianity, Hindu, Muslim, and Zoroastrian and Buddhism, all indicated.
So he was totally
non-denominational. He says, "I've come not to establish a new religion. I've come to put life into the old. I've come to unite them all like beads on one string."
Krishna said that also in the Gita.
Yeah. So when you go to India, no matter what your faith is or belief, you're welcome. I mean, you're welcome to go there as a seeker and to experience the avatar.
And you do gain a little bit of peace.
Well, yeah. I mean, you can hang out at the Pilgrim Center, and they have, people that just chat. They have musical instruments. They have agricultural study. There's some Meher Baba Trust development. We're trying to help the local farmers in agriculture. There's a Meher Baba school for the local kids. There's a Meher Baba medical clinic that they're trying to get staff members there to try to get that thing up and running because, it's tough to get people to work on volunteer basis.
Yes.
And that's open occasionally by both Western and Eastern medical personnel.
But Babaji told a story. He's one of the Baba's disciples who comes to America sometime in July and so on.
Yeah.
He told a story about in the beginning, where he talked about how they clean around there on the path going to the tomb. And they used to pay people initially, workers there, to do the work. But now he says there are people wanting to come there and work for nothing. They just want to have the privilege of cleaning around, sweeping.
And it's still a special time. There's about 4 or 5 of Meher Baba's close disciples of Mandali still living. Every year,
talk to them.
Yeah, every year another one will die, and because they're getting up in their 80s and 90s, and
they were with him since the 20s.
Right, and so if anybody out there has a urge or inkling to go, contact the Meher Baba Center, and you can leave a number to call you back. The Meher Baba Center is 323-731-3737. Leave a message on the machine, and somebody will get back to you, maybe give you details or send you information. The meetings, by the way, at the Meher Baba Center, if you wanted to come in person, there's like a library there to look at books and so forth. It's at 1214 South Van Ness. That's in LA. It's between Olympic and Pico off of Arlington and 12th Street. And meetings are 11 a.m. each Sunday. Admission is free, of course. So, Suhas, we have about a minute left. Do you have a summary of a particular message or something?
Yes, I want to read this one on true love.
Okay.
Number 69. It says, if anything ever touches my universal heart, it is love. Love and coercion can never go together. But while love cannot be forced upon anyone, it can be awakened through love itself. Love is essentially self-communicative. Those who do not have it catch it from those who have it. Those who receive love from others cannot be its recipients without giving a response, which in itself is the nature of love. True love is unconquerable and irresistible. It goes on gathering power and spreading itself until eventually it transforms everyone it touches. The only thing that I've been repeating ever since the first time I came is love God. Age after age, I've been saying nothing but love God.
What a way to end the program. Thank you, Suhas. It's time to wrap it up. We'll see you next time on the Meher Baba program. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Thank you.